Okay, so as I mentioned, this is a 3-part series. So here we go with part 2. Without any further ado, let's dive into the NAR settlement, how it's affecting you and your ability to buy real estate. Part 2, let's go.
Tell us more about, obviously, again, in layman's terms, the legal implications of the settlement side of things.
Okay, so
what does that really mean?
Yeah, so the settlement's interesting. And the settlement's interesting for a couple different reasons. One, it's a post-judgment settlement. Okay, that happens sometimes. A post-judgment settlement, typically when we think of a lawsuit, right, it's like getting into a fight. Like we said, we're going to the principal's office, and imagine the secretary in the front of the principal's office settles the complaint between Jeremy and our whole group, like everybody that's there, Jenny, Jeremy, whoever we got that took a rock or a piece of gum, whatever it is, the secretary solved it. She got a settlement. Everybody walked away. Everybody was fine. Now imagine going all the way to the principal's office is the idea of going to court. Okay, now say the principal says, guys, this is unacceptable. Jenny, you were injured. You have to do 15 minutes or you have to go to silent lunch for a week. Okay, you have to go to silent lunch for a week. Now let's say after that order or that decision by the principal's office, we go back and we talk to Jenny and we apologize. We're like, Jenny, I don't want to go to silent lunch for a week. Like, I got Pokemon cards to trade. I got things to do.
Yeah.
And she says, well, okay, why don't we go talk to the principal? And maybe if I tell him that I accept your apology, maybe he'll only give you 2 days of silent lunch or whatever the punishment was. That's what happened here. So they took this all the way through trial. And at trial, they showed enough evidence to the jury to convince the jury that this steering and these issues with commissions and these agreements and this situation was real. And the jury awarded a verdict. And it actually shocked me because a verdict page is very small. You can actually look it up if you go to the Missouri court website. They actually have a copy of the jury verdict there. It's 3 pages long. There's a couple of check boxes saying whether or not the person did what they said they did, whether the defendants, they agreed that they were liable for what they said they were liable for. But the biggest box is the box where they write down the amount of the judgment. And it's $1.78 billion. Like billion.
They wrote that in.
They wrote that in. It is handwritten, and it's not just 1.78. It's 1,780-something million thousand.
So are these jurors like mathematicians, or how do they derive that number?
So these numbers are derived from experts. All right. So one thing that was very interesting about this case is the method by which the attorneys went about getting this information, and it was really through the use of big data, databases, sale data. From various MLSs, which if you're in real estate, you understand the MLS holds all the information. For somebody that's in a real estate litigator, it's a gold mine. I'm able to pull with a subpoena every single iteration of a listing that you've ever put forward. If you've put something in, saved it, gone back, changed it, deleted it, I can pull all that. I can get every single thing that you have ever done in the MLS. And not only can I get it.
Published or not published.
Published or not published. Or previously published.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. And not only can we get that, but we can also get all the metadata behind it. So I can find out where you were when you posted it. I can find out your geographical location. If you were on a beach in Miami when you were logged into the MLS, I can find out exactly where you were at any point in time, and I can find out exactly what you typed, what you changed, and I can ask questions as to why you changed it. And so the MLS, while we think of it more of this idea of like, oh yeah, it's just advertising. I'm just putting on some cool pictures or not cool pictures. Whatever it is you're doing there in order to sell these homes. I'm doing all this stuff, right? But the MLS is much, much, much more detailed than that. It's much more complicated. I can see how many times a property is sold. I can see price variations. I can see all kinds of things. And so what they were able to prove is that through the use of big data, through the use of mathematicians, through the use of expert testimony, they were able to show that homes with lower commission rates sat on the market longer than homes with higher commission rates across the board.
Okay, from a logical standpoint, right, we take a step back. I can understand that, right? I'm not saying it's right, not saying I agree, but I can understand that. But what about this? So the lawsuit is trying to prevent that. And in a minute, we'll go through kind of some of the bullet points of what's coming out of the lawsuit. But let's say I'm a real estate agent. I'm not going to say I'm a good real estate agent or a bad real estate agent, but I'm just a real estate agent. What's if now a seller has the ability to pay me nothing as a buyer's agent to bring a buyer to, what would that not create more of exactly what caused the lawsuit in the first place? Does that make sense?
Not really. Give me an idea. Give me a thought process.
I see where you're going.
So the lawsuit is founded on the fact that I got two houses. One's offering me 3%. One's offering me 2%. I'm going to push more for the 3%, right? Because I'm a shady real estate agent, and I just care about money, and I don't care about my people. Mm-hmm. All right. I'm not saying that's you. If you're a great real estate agent, keep it up. But now I have house A that's offering me 2% and house B that's offering me 0%, mm-hmm. Would that not proliferate or increase the problem that initially caused this lawsuit? Because now I'm making nothing if I show your house.
Sure. That's
so how is it solving the problem?
So that's a great question. And that gets into the structure of the settlement and what the settlement actually does. So the biggest hit is that sellers are no longer required to pay buyer realtors. That's right. It. What the predicate in steering is that you have foreknowledge. The agent has foreknowledge of the amount of commission that they are going to be entitled to prior to showing the home. If I don't know how much commission I'm going to get paid, I don't have the ability to put my own interests above that of my clients.
Okay.
Exactly.
That's fair. So then the commission payout would no longer be disclosed on a listing.
Exactly. And that is what the settlement does. Now, it's important to note that it doesn't do it blanketly. There are mechanisms by which broker commission can be communicated. But they are not they are drastically changed.
Okay.
And if you want, we can go through that when the time comes, but that's a great question. And the only way to really understand it is to read the language, but also to read the language in the reality and understanding that this type of, the weight of this type of settlement is something that is going to take years to flow through. It's going to be imperfect.
Yeah.
Because you are talking multiple MLSs across multiple states, across different techniques. I mean, as we said, as has been said multiple times, I mean, there were many states where you weren't even required to have a buyer's agreement. I mean,
14, I think it was.
14, yeah. And that, for us here in North Carolina, a lot of these issues were kind of nebulous to us. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because North Carolina has been ahead of the curve for years when it comes to commission disclosures, buyer agreements, agency agreements. And part and parcel, or a major reason for that is that the North Carolina Real Estate Commission has kind of been ahead of the curve thinking about what is required in order for us to provide the best service to our clients. And it's useful because we have Charlotte, we have Raleigh, we have Wilmington. I mean, we have exploding metropolitan cities in North Carolina. And so it really was beneficial. They did a great job doing it. But these contexts and these questions as to how these things impact, we can only start with the language that's in the settlement based on what currently exists. And, I think we'll get down there in time, but one big thing that we need to think about is that poses both a detriment, but it also provides a ton of opportunity.
Yeah.
A ton of opportunity.
So who does the settlement technically get paid to? If there's only 5 families or 6 families named in the lawsuit, there's $1.7 billion with a B. How does that get distributed?
Right. So one of the things about the settlement is it actually reduces down the amount that was actually awarded. That's the biggest thing. And that's something really important to think about from a litigation perspective. When you're doing real estate litigation, you got to remember that usually you're dealing with some type of contract, you're dealing with some kind of breach, you're doing some kind of issue where money is the best solution, right? And so when money is the best solution, you don't give up money unless you get something for it, right? If I'll tell you right now, if I had a $1.78 billion settlement, I'm not reducing that, and I'm not reducing my fees, and I'm not reducing everything that means unless I'm getting exactly what I want with the reduction.
Fair.
Right? It's just the nature of the game. Like, it's neither good nor bad. It's just the reality of how it works. and whether rightly or wrongly. And so in this particular lawsuit, what we had, and I'm looking for the page right now, the payment of the total settlement amount of what has come through and been agreed to is that there will be a reduction in the total amount from the 1.78 billion to a total of, I believe, 418 million. Is that what we have? 418 million? Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And that's a huge drop. It's important to remember, too, that 1.78 billion represents multiple years of the entire revenue of the NAR. It would be a death sentence to the NAR if they had to pay every amount.
Sure.
So what happens is that this money will mostly be paid over time into an escrow account. So within 30 days following the filing of the first motion for the preliminary approval, the NAR deposits $5 million. Okay. Within 90 days following final approval, which we're expecting right now to be in July, the NAR will deposit another $197 million. No later than 1 year after the initial $197 million, NAR will deposit $72 million. And then 2 years after the initial, $197 million. And then $72 million into the principal account. No later than 3 years after the initial, another $197 million. And that's how it breaks down. And there's a reason for that enforcement, or there's a reason for that mechanism, and it's because of the enforcement, right? I need to make sure that you've got skin in the game for the entire period that we're trying to enforce this thing. This is not a one and done. And we'll see that when we get to Section H, which covers the actual agreement of what needs to change. It has a 7-year total period. So we want the NAR to be working on this. And also with these sums of money, the NAR may not necessarily... In these settlements, you want to keep the goose making eggs. You want to keep the chicken making eggs, right? You want them to keep making money in order to pay the settlement.
Yeah,
right. So that gives us the deal. And I don't think it like the goose making eggs. Do geese make eggs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anybody?
Maybe. I don't know.
Anybody?
Goose eggs? I think goose. I'm going to go with
And maybe Jeremy can tell us.
I don't know. Maybe he would.
Yeah, maybe
Jenny.
Yeah, Jeremy
one of the two. I don't know.
and Jenny. Yeah, maybe they can tell us.
Golden goose.
Right, exactly.
If I sold a house, am I entitled to this compensation?
Right, so the total monetary settle amount, okay, shall be held at escrow of the account and constitute what's called the settlement fund, okay? The full and complete cost of the class notice, claims administration, settlement class members' compensation, current and former class representatives' incentives awards, attorney's fees, and reimbursement of all actual expenses of the actions, any other litigation costs of the plaintiff will all be paid out of the settlement fund, okay? If separate class notice occurs with respect to any settlement or brokerage that opts into the settlement, the National Association of Realtors agrees to pay the full and complete cost of such class notice above and beyond the total monetary settlement amount. Okay, so there will be a payout to individuals that purchased a home between 2015 and 2021, which is the time period that they set for this lawsuit. That will come in time.
Yeah.
And it will be done on a I'm sure it'll be delineated on a per case basis or just given the complexity of the differences of amounts and commissions and everything that's involved in it. It may be similar to, you were involved in the iTunes suit a few years ago and you got like $2, for whatever potential thing that it was. But all these things go forward, and all these things are pieced through, and it's all contained in the settlement agreement and breaks down. And there are multiple check-ins over the period with the court system and between the parties to make sure that everything's being done correctly and in agreement with what has to happen.
Understood.
Got it. So, as a real estate agent, let's say I'm a real estate agent, I am kind of panicking. I'm a little scared because I don't know what this means for me. So tell me, how is this going to impact my day-to-day life?
So that's a great question.
How I do business.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is no one really knows. And anybody that tells you that they know,
there you have it, folks. No,
yeah. I mean,
Wrap this up.
Yeah, I mean that's it. The reality is that we just don't know, and the reason we don't know is because this is of the cases that have come through that have been this large, where we've really pumped this much work and this much litigation into a problem. There are just free radicals that we don't know of. Remember, real estate is a commission game. It's a commission game. Mm-hmm. That's it. And so there are going to be impacts on the number of realtors. There are going to be impacts on the structure of brokerages. There are going to be impacts on the promulgation of rules like in FHA and VA as to whether or not, especially in VA, where a buyer's agent or a buyer is not allowed, if they're a veteran, to pay their agent certain
temporarily
things.
Allowed now.
Temporarily
as
allowed.
Of Monday.
And that's where we're going with it. You literally took the words out of my mouth because that's a change that no one ever imagined would come through.
Right.
No one ever never imagined that would change. But because of the settlement,
They had to.
you had to. And see, that's the kind of thing that we're looking
So what happens? We don't really know.
Well, we can deduce certain things, right?
Okay.
We can deduce certain things. We can say that the MLS is going to change.
Yeah.
You're never going to see broker commissions on the MLS again. You're not.
Fair.
And not only the commission section on the MLS, but the settlement states that you cannot put it anywhere in the MLS, in any field. Agent remarks can't be in there. Can
I put it on Facebook?
No, well, interesting. We'll get to that because there's actually a clause about aggregators. So things like Zillow, things like Redfin, the aggregators. The drafters did everything possible to remove any way to go around. And if they find that there is a mechanism that is being used that the NAR knows or should know is being used to go around the settlement, has to be stopped. So if there becomes a situation where, say we go on Facebook and we open up a Facebook page and it says, I'm a realtor, I'm a broker. And on those posts, we say, hey, I'm selling such and such house and my seller's offering 2% commission. Does that violate the settlement? Depends.
Technically not today, but potentially.
Potentially, it becomes a big enough of a problem, then yeah, I mean, it could be.
So what you're saying is don't create an app where agents can see the commission on listings.
It's probably going to be a bad idea.
Wink, wink.
Probably be a bad idea. You may win that, but you're going to get sued.
Have a nice legal budget.
You're going to have a bad time.
So if I'm a real estate agent, I can't see what commissions. I'm showing a client houses. I get to a house. My client picks a house. We write an offer. I find out it's 0% commission. What are my options from there? What do I do?
So there's actually several. Okay, so and I think this is where the opportunity comes in for the agent, right? Okay, so let's take our example. All right, we're buying a house. Anthony and I are going to buy Trevor's house. All right, we get there and Trevor says not paying any commission. Okay, so then first thing I got to do is I got to go to Anthony, right? I've got my buyer's agency form, right? My buyer's agency form says that Anthony's got to pay me 2%, right? Now, if the seller offers to pay me 2%, okay, fine, like that's great. That they can care.
Covered.
If that doesn't happen, Anthony's got to pay me 2%. I mean, the average price of a home in Charlotte right now, I think, is over $400,000. So I mean, 2%. I'm looking at $8,000.
I think.
Yeah, and at 8% interest rates, and with other closing costs and associated issues that are going through, do I have $8,000 to laying around that I can pay my realtor for? There's where the opportunity is. The average person is going to sit back and say, well, I'm just getting out because, my buyers are so strapped for cash right now, they can't do it. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's look at some ideas of what's there. So when you speak in the settlement, okay, and it's very important, but there is a portion here of the settlement that states that an agent can make an offer as long as it is verbal. There is also a statement that says, because that brokers on speech, right? Like we can make the conversation. We can have a conversation. If you say, look, I talked to him and he's willing to give you 1.5. All right, he's willing to give you 1.5. And there's also mechanisms there to say that it can be given as part of a concession, as long as the concession is not only the commission.
Right.
That's right. This provides a way for people to give and create and benefit that allows for items to come through and make this settlement a little less cumbersome. Because remember, the goal is to increase competition, right? By having realtors compete for business by reducing down their commission so buyers are paying it, right? The other issue is that the point of this is to make it so sellers, right, have full knowledge across all of the United States as to what is actually happening and what they're actually paying.
Yeah.
When they go through. Now, it's important to note that a lot of what they've said here in the lawsuit, especially in the complaint, revolves around actions in other countries. And there is a reality that in other countries, the commissions are much, much lower. Mm-hmm. Much, much lower. In several countries, I think they cited New Zealand, Australia. There's some other, I believe Singapore was in there, the UK. Total overall compensation was 1.5 to 3%. Where in the United States, it was 5% to 6%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is a huge gap.
Huge difference.
That is a huge, huge, huge difference.
Yeah.
And so that's what we generally see. And that's really, I think, the goal of what we're looking at here in regards to how these guys want to go through and what the point of this litigation is they want to bring that down to a more reasonable level. Remember, if I got to pay you 2%, On a $400,000 house, it's $8,000. But if I got to pay you 1%, it's $4,000.
Yeah, it's
much more feasible.
So that's much more feasible for a buyer. It also increases the amount that a seller takes home because the seller's not paying for that themselves. They're paying the realtor and negotiating whatever they want to negotiate with their realtor. So it goes through. So it benefits the consumer. It doesn't necessarily benefit agents, but it benefits the consumer. So to get to the second part of your question, how does that benefit an agent? This is where the creativity, the economic creativity of the agents comes into play.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm making 10 grand now on a deal, all right, and one deal is 10 grand, and now I've got to do 4 deals to make 10 grand. That is where the idea of, okay, what do I need to streamline? What technology can I use? What type of buyer am I going to work with? What questions am I going to ask up front? Are there situations where I can work with $1.5 million buyer who's got $1.5 million cash and he's cool paying me 20 grand? Or am I working with, a guy that's like trying to buy his first home, 150K, small town, North Carolina? Like, what is he going to be able to do? And so a realtor at that point, and I would encourage realtors to do this, but talk with your lending partners. Talk with the people, talk with your colleagues and say, what creative mechanisms are you using in order to move this forward? Because I think there really is a mechanism there where banks can step up and provide benefits. Sellers can provide benefits. Other realtors can provide knowledge. Can't provide benefits, but they can provide knowledge to enable this change to be a little bit easier to go through. And remember, the guy that invented the best mousetrap won. So, there's a level of competition here. You're talking...
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much for watching part 2 of breaking down this NAR settlement and how it impacts you. Make sure to stay tuned for the last part 3, as it's coming up. And don't forget, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for everything about real estate, mortgages, real estate investing, and more. Make it a good one, and thanks for staying tuned.